Good morning and welcome back to the Community Sector Council. I am Shelley Martin. I am a project coordinator with our By the Books program, which is the program that is excited to bring this webinar to you today. I hope the weather is nice where you are. It is beautiful here in St. John's, and I am definitely soaking up the vitamin D. Very badly needed, I think. I just want to do a quick sound check to make sure that you guys can hear me okay. So if you could please just raise your hand to let me know that you do indeed hear me. Oh, I see one hand. All right, we got a couple coming in there. Perfect. Sounds good. Nice to see some, well, I guess I can't see you. I see some of your names, people that I've seen over the past week. So hi again. So we're going to get started now. As I said, today's webinar is on completing and filing your T4 information return, which is due at the end of this month. It is brought to you by our By the Books program, which is basically a program designed to help enhance and improve financial management in the nonprofit and community sectors. And there's various aspects to this program. Our skills building piece is one that I've certainly been working hard on over the past 3 to 4 months. But we have other exciting things that hopefully you're going to see in the very near future coming out of this program, such as a directory of services. So a directory of organizations, companies, individuals who are able and willing to provide services, various finance services to nonprofit organizations and charities. We are developing what we call a Treasurers for Tomorrow program. And this program is essentially going to help prepare people to become treasurers, to serve on boards of nonprofit organizations and charities, of course. And oftentimes we find this is one of the harder roles to fill, the role of the treasurer. So that's an exciting program that we're working on. And the final piece is basically to develop a network or a community of practice for finance practitioners. So a place where people can share best practices, share experiences, and learn from one another, if you will. So exciting things coming from our By the Books program. And you should be seeing some things on our webpage, which is under renovation. So we're excited about that as well. So we're very busy here at the Community Sector Council. Okay, so we're going to get started. I will note that if you have a question during the webinar, please go ahead and type your question. I will do my best to keep an eye on the question box so that I can address it at the time that it was asked and as closely related to the material I'm talking about at the time. So go ahead and type those in, or you can certainly contact me after the webinar if you have any questions or need clarification. All right, let's get started. So as I said, basically what you have to file by the end of this month is called the T4 information return. This return includes all of the T4 slips for your employees during the year. So it's based on the calendar year. So it'll be the calendar year 2017. And what we call a T4 summary document. So I'm going to go through the T4 and the T4 summary in some detail, just to show you how things are filed, or how boxes are completed, and where you can find other information if you need that when you're completing the T4s and the T4 summary. This T4 information return, which includes your slips and your summary, can be filed electronically fairly easily. The web forms program or portal is one that I've used in the past. It is very easy to use, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as I'm going through. And any organization can use web forms to complete these documents and then file them electronically. You can also use what's called the Internet File Transfer, which uses XML. And this actually has to be used for an organization that has more than 50 T4 slips. So if that's your organization, you must use the Internet File Transfer service in order to file these documents electronically. And CRA can actually impose a penalty on you if you don't use that service and you are what's considered a large organization. So having 50 or more than 50, I believe is the definition, more than 50 T4 slips. This T4 information return has to be filed by, as I said, the end of this month. If you are filing by paper, then it has to be postmarked by the last day in February. And the mailing address is here if you are filing in paper. However, I do encourage, if you have internet access, the web forms portal is very easy to use and can make it a little quicker and simpler for you, as we'll talk about. There are penalties for late filing, and they can be quite steep. $25 per day per late T4 slip, and there is a minimum penalty of $100 to a maximum penalty of $2,500. So we don't have money to be spending in penalties and interest for late filing. So keep in mind that your deadline is the end of this month, which is Wednesday, February 28th. All right, so the T4 slip itself, the T4 slip summarizes the information that employees need to prepare their own income taxes. So this is one of the main reasons that we prepare this slip. It must be completed every year for the calendar year. So we are completing the T4 slips for the calendar year of 2017 right now. And it must be completed for all employees who earn more than $500. So that's a very low threshold. So if you have employed anyone earning more than $500 under your employ, you must prepare a T4 slip for that person. Also, if you're in the situation, this may not apply to most organizations that are here on the webinar today, but for anyone receiving a taxable group term life insurance benefit, there is no minimum. Even if it's $5, you must prepare a T4 slip for that. All right, so this is what the T4 slip looks like. Most of us have seen this from being employed and having received our own T4 slips. So we're just going to go through each section of this to make sure you know what you need to fill out, what may or may not be applicable, or even just where to go find additional information that you may need. So of course, first we have the employer portion. So this is our organization that we are completing, or the organization that employed the employees. So completing the employer's name and the employer's account number, that is your payroll account number. So that usually consists of your 9-digit organization or business number. The letters RP represent the payroll account. And then if an organization had more than one payroll account, then you would have to indicate which payroll account this is for. Most of us will just have RP0001 because most of us will just have one payroll account. Next is the employee information. So of course we need to have the employee's social insurance number, which we should have from when we, on file from when we hire an employee, and the employee's name and address. And they're very specific. They say, last name in capital letters. So fill out the form as indicated and give them the required information. So last name in capital letters, the first name and initial, and of course the social insurance number. So they want to make sure there is no confusion at all who this T4 belongs to. So other employment information, box 10, you do have to fill out the province of employment, and it is the province of employment, not the province of residence. Okay, I'm just going back quickly. I do see a question, so I do want to try to address them as quickly as possible. So the question is, the CRA website says not to input the employer payroll number on the T4 slip portion for the employee. Is this still the case? Now the T4 slip, I believe if you complete it electronically, it just populates. You don't actually complete two separate sections. It will just populate the second section. So my advice is to put it in the first section. If it populates automatically and it puts it on the second half, then that's fine. I don't think that's a big issue. It's not like these numbers are confidential. You can actually go online and find any organization's business number. So I would advise, like I said, web forms is the simplest way to complete these. You will only have to complete one half. It will populate the second half. So go ahead and put the payroll number in on the first half. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so back to our other employment information. As I said, the province of employment is where the employee worked, not where they reside. So for us, most of us will be putting Newfoundland in that box 10. For box 28, you click this box if an employee was exempt from having CPP or EI deducted from their pay. And it's only if they were exempt for the entire year for some period. So again, most of us will not be checking something in box 28. Maybe an example could be if you have an employee who is 65 to 70 years old and is currently receiving CPP benefits. They are also working and they have completed the form to not, there's an election that they can file to not have CPP deducted from their pay now while they're working. If that's the case and the employee has done this prior to the start of 2017, so they have been exempt for the entire year, then you would check that box 28. But there's not a lot of situations where we would be checking that an employee is completely exempt from CPP and EI for the entire year. But that could be a situation where they might be. The PPIP, that applies only to the province of Quebec. So you don't need to worry about that portion. The next thing is the employment code. So again, this is a box that for most of us will likely be left blank. You only put in an employment code if one of the situations here on the screen applies. So a placement or employment agency worker, a taxi driver, barber or hairdresser, and so on. So I think most of us would not have that situation again when we are completing our T4s. So if you don't have one of those codes applying to the employee, then you do not put anything in the box 29. Also, just as a side note, if your employee does fall into either code 11, 12, 13, or 17, you actually wouldn't put anything in the employment income box in box 14 when you complete this return either. But again, I don't think a lot of our employees are going to fall into these categories. All right, the pay information. So most of this is fairly straightforward. Most organizations will use the top boxes, so boxes 14, 16, 18, 22, 24, and 26. Box 14 is your total employment income before deductions. It also includes taxable benefits if your employee is receiving any taxable benefits, such as maybe an automobile taxable benefit. That would get included in box 14. It includes all bonuses, commissions, vacation pay, tips and gratuities, these types of things. Box 14 does not include if an employee was paid severance pay or a retiring allowance during the year. It may be the case where the employee received both. So the income they received would go in box 14, but the amount of severance pay actually does not go in this box. It will go at the bottom of the return, and we will talk about that in a couple of slides' time. Box 16, of course, is the CPP contributions that the employee had withheld from their pay. And you're going to get that information from your payroll records. Now, wherever you have that stored, you may have a payroll booklet, you may be keeping your records in Excel, or you may be using simply accounting with a payroll module, and you can create a report that will show you these amounts. But these come from the organization's records of what has been paid during the year. And I should also note that these amounts only include the actual pay the employee received in 2017. So if our organization's year end was December 31st, oftentimes we will have a few days around year end where an employee has worked but has not yet been paid. So when we're preparing our year end or our financial statements, we would make an accrual for that pay on the financial statements. Well, that accrual would not be included on the T4s because the employee did not actually receive it in 2017. So it is important to note that this is amounts the employees actually received in that calendar year. All right, so CPP is the employee's contributions. Box 17 we will not use. That is for QPP, which is again a Quebec program. Box 18 is the employees' EI premiums that were withheld from their pay. So that again will come from your payroll records, your organization's payroll records. Box 22 is the total income tax that we withheld on the employee's behalf, so the organization, and that will come from your payroll records. Boxes 24 and 26 show the insurable earnings for the EI program and the pensionable earnings that the CPP amounts were calculated on. So we talked about these amounts back in our payroll webinar last week. And there are maximums for these amounts. In 2017, the maximum EI insurable earnings are $51,300, and the maximum CPP pensionable earnings are $55,300. In a lot of our cases, the boxes 24 and 26 will equal box 14. So in many cases, the total income that an employee has earned is both insurable earnings for EI and it's pensionable earnings for CPP. Where we might have some differences is if there are some taxable benefits, for example, included in box 14. Then you may have a slight difference in box 24 and 26. Well, I think for most of us, they will equal the box 14. So it's basically the earnings that your CPP and EI were calculated on, if you will. Okay, so those are the common boxes that most employers will complete. The lower boxes will depend on the situation. So Box 44 for union dues, only of course if the employee is part of a union and the employer withholds the union dues from their pay. Box 46 is charitable donations, and lots of people make charitable donations, but this box is only completed if it was a donation that was withheld from the employee's pay. So maybe you have some program set up at your organization whereby employees are donating a certain amount to the organization or some other organization. But this box 46, only applies to donations that were actually deducted from the employee's earnings. Boxes 20, 50, and 52 all have to do with registered pension plans or deferred profit sharing plan. So if the employee is a member of a registered pension plan with the organization, then the amount of contributions would go in box 20. The pension adjustment, which has to do with the employee's total pension credits, would go in box 52. The pension adjustment is oftentimes supplied by the pension plan administrator. I think I've included, yes, I have. On the next slide, maybe. There we go. So if you do have a registered pension plan or something that you have to calculate the pension adjustment, there is guidance provided by CRA for doing that. Oftentimes, as I said, the administrator provides those amounts, but there is guidance from CRA on calculating pension adjustments. Again, probably not applicable to as many of our organizations, or it may not be, but that information is available to you if you need it. Box 50 is just the RPP, or the Deferred Profit Sharing Plan registration number. Boxes 55 and 56 at the very bottom there, again, they deal with the PPIP, which is a Quebec program. So it's a parental, I'm trying to remember the acronym, parental something insurance program, something. So it is a Quebec program, and we will not be completing boxes 55 and 56. All right. The other pay information. So at the very bottom of the T4, there's a bunch of other boxes. There's actually 6 there that you can use for each employee. And this information, you use these boxes to provide information about taxable benefits, amounts relating to commissions, deductible amounts. So one of the common things we're going to put in here is, or we can put in here, is amounts that employees pay towards their health and dental plan premiums, Fisher's income, etc. So there's a whole bunch of codes that can fit into these boxes. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about the most common codes. Just double checking now. I think I might have a question. Just give me a second there. RRSPs, Katie, no, those, so you're going back to, so Katie has a question. She just says RRSPs, but she's talking about, I believe, the contributions. So this is specifically a registered pension plan with the organization, or a deferred profit sharing plan. So I don't believe if an employee contributes to an RRSP that it goes here. I can confirm that afterwards, because I obviously can't go double check now, but I believe this relates specifically to pension plans with the organization. And another question, in regard to EI employer contribution portion, is this amount reported anywhere on the registered charity return or other? So we're not talking about the registered charity return today. We're talking about the T4s. On the T4 itself, it will just be the employees' contributions to EI and CPP, but we will include the employer's contributions on the T4 summary, which we'll get to shortly. So hopefully that clears up that question. All right, so getting back to our other T4 boxes, as I said, there's a bunch of codes here. I'm going to talk about the most common ones. I do want to mention that there are 6 spaces here to put other information that needs to be reported. If an employee needs more than 6, which is probably unlikely, but if there's a case where one single employee needs more than 6 codes to report different taxable benefits and whatnot, you actually complete a second T4 slip for that employee. But on the second slip, you only include the employer information. So that was on an earlier slide. The employee information, so of course the social insurance number and the name, and the additional information that you needed to make the second slip for. So you have 6 other codes on the first slip, and maybe you needed a second slip for one other code. So that would be the only thing you would put on that second slip, aside from your employer and your employee identification information. All right, so there is a process you can follow if you need to do that. All right, so the more common codes for other include code 34 is for taxable benefit relating to the personal use if you provide your employee with a vehicle. So employees that are provided with vehicles from employers, there's often deemed to be a personal use. So, they're taking that home. They might be using it on the weekends or the evenings or whatever the case is. That means employers should calculate a taxable benefit. There's actually a calculator to do that, which I just discovered this week, but I think is a great tool. And it's an automobile benefits online calculator. So if you do provide a benefit to employees in terms of giving them an automobile for use, and there's likely a personal portion of that, then you can use this automobile benefits online calculator to determine what that taxable benefit is. So that's a great tool that I wasn't aware of until maybe 2 weeks ago. Other common things that you will see in this other box is for codes 66 and 67. This is where you put severance pay. So if an employee did receive a retiring allowance or severance pay during the year, code 66 is used if that severance pay is eligible to be transferred into some other pension plan, so an RRSP or something. Code 67 you use if it's not eligible to transfer. It doesn't mean that the employee actually transferred it. It just means that it's eligible for transfer, so it would go in code 66. If it's not eligible, it would go in code 67. Just checking my questions. And Katie, for the RRSP, I'll have to just get clarification for you on that one, okay? All right, code 77 is if there were workers' compensation benefits repaid to the employer, because the employee would be able to deduct that on their tax return. That will go in code 77. Code 85 is a common one that we may run into, and that has to do with the employee paid premiums for the health and dental plans that employees may have. There's actually two ways to handle this. Not everyone reports this amount in box 85 on the T4. You can do that, or some organizations will issue a letter to the employee on their request. So the employee might say, okay, I need the total amount of premiums I paid for my health and dental plans for this year. So the employer will calculate it and provide them with a letter, and that's the employee's support for when they complete their tax return. So you can either report it in box 85, or you can issue them a separate letter. I don't think there's a requirement either way, because that information is used specifically for the employee to put on their own tax return. So either of those methods is fine. Code 40 is like the catch-all code. So if there is something that there's not a specific code for, but it's a taxable benefit or something that needs to get reported, oftentimes it's put in box or code 40. And code 40 is actually not, it's a box that's actually not used on an employee's tax return. So it's just for reporting purposes. All right. So as I said, completing the T4 slips, you can actually use the Web Forms program. It is very easy to use, and there are some benefits when you complete your T4 summary to using the Web Forms for filling out your T4 slips. All you need to use the Web Forms portal is the organization's payroll account number. And you do need a web access code, but if you do not have one, there is a button or a link that says, I need a web access code, and you can click on that link. They'll ask you for a couple pieces of information, and you can obtain one. So it's still fairly easy to get access to this Web Forms program. The program does allow you to save your incomplete T4s and complete them later. So you don't have to be able to do it all in one sitting, which is great. You can save the T4s as PDFs and print them from your PDFs. And the link is here to the Web Forms portal. So it's a great tool for any organization to use, no matter how large or small. It's not complicated. It doesn't cost anything, of course. And it's all you need to access it is your internet access, and I guess a computer that is fairly up to date, of course. But it's a great tool, and I'll also show you when we talk about the T4 summary in a few minutes how that can benefit you by using the Web Forms. You can also complete your T4s using a fillable PDF. I've included the fillable PDF for the T4 as well as the T4 summary as handouts to this webinar. And I've also included the links at the end of the webinar, and I'll email you out the forms after the webinar. So you'll have those that you can use. And of course, as I said, for larger employers, you can use the internet file transfer. Or smaller employers can use it as well, but oftentimes to use this, there's a file that's created from your accounting software. So it may not be for everyone. Larger employers have to use it, so employers with more than 50 returns. For us smaller organizations, the Web Forms is a great tool. For distributing the T4s, as I said, they have to be distributed by the last day of February of this year, which is Wednesday, February 28th. You can distribute them in 3 ways. You can make them available electronically on a secure site. So, for example, as a MUN employee, when I used to lecture at the university, I actually still do some per course instruction there. So I can log into my MUN account or my MUN, my account, and access my T4 electronically through that secure site. You can distribute them through email to your employees, but you do have to have written consent. So that is mandatory or necessary. And of course, you can provide them with paper copies. They should be 2 copies because they need one for their own purpose and one to submit with their tax return if they're completing that in paper, in person or by mail. And if you're going to mail them, they do have to be post dated by the last day of February. All right, the second part of the T4 information return is the T4 summary. So it's also prepared for the same year that you are preparing your T4 slips. It reports combined amounts on a bunch of the T4 slips. So we're going to take a look at the summary in detail. And it's also going to compare the source deductions that you should have remitted based on what you report on your T4 slips and your T4 summary to what you actually remitted during the year when you were remitting source deductions. So let's take a look at that. And by comparing, you could have an overpayment or balance owing. We'll talk about that. Hopefully you won't. All right, this is a complete T4 summary. So we're going to look at this in pieces. It's a 1-page summary. And I'll tell you now, if you use the Web Forms portal to complete your T4s, a lot of the summary is going to be populated for you, which means you won't have to go through 15 T4s adding up amounts. It's very convenient. So the Web Forms is a really great tool for you to use. All right, so the top of your T4 summary, you of course have to input the year that you are relating to. So this would be, for us, we are talking about the calendar year 2017 now. Input the employer's information again, so the employer's payroll account number and the address of the employer. All right, so there's 2 rows of boxes here. On your left, you have box 88, which is the total number of T4 slips filed. So this does not come, there is no box 88 on each T4. This is the number of T4s that you had to file for your employees. Box 14 will, box 14, 20, and 52 will come from the T4s. And as I said, if you've completed these using Web Forms, this will populate for you. So you don't have to go add up all the box 14s or add up all the box 20s if you're using the Web Forms to do the T4s and the T4 summary. It will populate for you. Great time saver. You may want to check, you may want to spot check some boxes, but generally this will populate correctly. And as I said, it's a great time saver for you. So these all just come from the T4s themselves. If you are doing it by hand, you will have to add up all the box 14s on however many T4s you have. And the same for box 20 and 52 and so on. In the column on the right-hand side, we have box 16, of course, is coming from the T4. So box 16, 18, and 22 all come from the T4s. And again, they are the totals of all those boxes. So the Web Forms will total that for you, which is great. Box 27 and 19 are the employer's portion of CPP and EI. So this, of course, is not reported on individual T4s. But this will populate if you're using the Web Forms based on what you have entered from the T4s. So for example, if you recall, employers are required to remit the same amount of CPP as an employee remits. So box 27 will populate from box 16 if you're using Web Forms. They should be equal. Whatever the employee pays into CPP, the employer should pay the same amount. For the EI premiums, if you remember, employers are expected to remit 40% more EI than what the employees remit. So box 18 will come from all of the T4s, the summary of the box 18s from all of the T4s. Box 19 you could easily calculate by taking box 18 and multiply by 1.4, or the web forms will populate that for you by the same calculation. So again, the web forms will make this a lot less painful. Box 22, of course, is the summary of all the box 22. So all the income taxes that we've withheld from employees' pay. Box 80 is simply an addition of the top 5 boxes. So the employees and the employers' portions of CPP, the employees and the employers' portions of EI, and the income tax that was deducted. So box 80 is basically saying, based on what you reported on your T4s, this is the total amount of source deductions you should have remitted during the year. We're then going to compare that to box 82, which is the actual amount you remitted or paid to CRA during the year for source deductions. So web forms will not populate this. You will get that from either your statement of accounts, your payroll account statements, or you can go back through your records and calculate your remittances. Either way, that's where you're going to get box 82. And then, of course, you compare. Ideally, we want box 80 and box 82 to equal. So that means we correctly calculated deductions during the year and remitted the full amount to CRA. And if 80 and 82 equal, then you will not have any difference, and you will not have anything that you have to remit. Now, it's possible that they don't equal for some, various reasons. A mistake was made, would be the most common one. If you actually have an overpayment, so if your remittances are higher than the total deductions that you reported in box 80, then you basically have to include a note as to why the overpayment occurred and how you want the balance applied. So you can actually choose to have this refunded, or you can choose to have it applied to another tax account or another organization account, if you will. If box 82 is less than box 80, so you have not remitted enough, then you would have a balance due, and you have to remit that balance due with the submission of your T4 information return. So on the T4 summary, on the second page is just basically an information page of how to file, where to send your return, and they also tell you how you can pay, and it's your normal payment methods through the My Business account or the My Payment option, and so on. So ideally, boxes 80 and 82 will be the same. Also, CRA doesn't usually refund or require payment if the difference is $2 or less. So if for some reason you have a very minor difference of $1.58, you will not have to remit payment for that, nor would you receive a refund for that amount. So they don't make adjustment for any amounts that are basically $2 or less. All right, the bottom of the T4 summary, this is your certification. So this is where you certify that all of the information on the T4 slips and this summary is correct and complete. Boxes 74 and 75 are only completed for a Canadian-controlled private corporation or unincorporated employers. So there may be a few of you that are actually not incorporated. An unincorporated employer would include the social insurance number of, it wouldn't be an owner per se, but I'm actually not sure if that would be the president of the board or the president of the organization. Most of us, I believe, are incorporated, but there may be a couple of unincorporated organizations. Boxes 76 and 78 are completed by everyone. So this will be the person to contact about the return. So usually the person who has completed the return. And of course, at the very bottom, you have to sign the form, which of course electronically we would put, we would enter the information in there, but there wouldn't be an electronic signature. But certifying that the information on the return is complete, the related slips are complete and correct. And of course, anything that you submit to CRA, you will have to complete some sort of certification or check this box or whatever the case might be, saying that the information is complete and accurate to the best of your knowledge. And that's very, very typical. So this T4 summary, I know I've said it several times, but completing it through the web forms will make that process very quick, eliminate you from having to add up a whole bunch of boxes on the T4 slips. Not a big deal if you only have a couple of T4 slips, but when you're getting into, 15 and 20 T4 slips, it can be quite cumbersome to have to add up all the box 14s, all the box 16s, all the box 18s, and so on. So the web forms is a great tool. It can be used by anyone. There's no cost. So, avail of that if you have the electronic access. All right, so just to summarize, the T4 information return is the package that you submit at the end of February, and it includes all of the T4 slips and the T4 summary itself. It can be filed electronically by the last day of February, or if you're mailing it, it has to be postmarked by the last day of February. And the T4s have to be distributed to employees by that same date. And I went through the 3 ways that you can distribute T4s: electronically through a secure site, via email, as long as you have their written consent. So you could send a group or a mass email to all employees saying, please reply yes if you consent to having your T4 emailed to you. And the ones that consent you can email, the other ones you would have to print and provide 2 paper copies, so that they have one for their own use and one that they could submit with their return. And again, the supply has to be made by the end of February. If you have a payment owing from your T4 summary, you should also submit that when you file your T4 information return. So again, the ways to remit that, they are noted on the T4 information return, but they include the My Payment account, the My Business account options, and so on. And just as a side note, although it's not the T4, your other payroll-related information that is due at the end of February is your workers' comp statements, your annual employer statements. So all incorporated organizations should be registered with Workplace Health and Safety Compensation Commission, and these employer statements are due at the end of February as well. There's usually 3 statements that you have to complete: the employer payroll statement, the occupational health and safety statement, and the employer contractor statement. And they can actually be completed online using the FastFile or Connect modules. So keep in mind that the due dates for your workers' comp annual employer statement is also the last day in February. All right, so that completes our webinar for today. Hopefully you have all the information you need. I'm sure most of you, this is probably not your first year completing T4s. If you've learned something new, fabulous. If you are new, if this is your first year, you should have all the information necessary to complete those T4s. I've included some links here for you. And so there's your go-to is going to be CRA. They write the rules, and you want to make sure that you are doing everything in accordance with their rules. They have lots of guides and information pages. Sometimes it might be overwhelming because they have so many. So I have tried to categorize those for you here as well. So there's links here for your forms. These are fillable PDFs that you can use. Just general T4 information for employers. If you have to amend T4 slips after filing, there's a section here on how to do that. There's actually a CRA webinar, although I couldn't load the video, but the written, it's written out what the person actually says in the video. So if you want to scan that, there is a link there. There is an employer's guide, which I also included as a handout to the webinar for filling the T4 slip, or filing, sorry, the T4 slip and the T4 summary. And of course, for Workplace Health and Safety Compensation Commission, here's your Connect portal. I believe on the annual employer statements, there should be an access code to access the Connect or the FAST file so that you can complete those forms electronically as well. I'm just going to go back to my questions. I believe there might be a couple there, so bear with me for a minute. Okay, thanks. If line 82, remittances, is left blank in error, is there a way to fix this without having to call CRA? I'm not sure if you are submitting it electronically, I'm not sure you can submit it, or I think that will, before, I don't know if it will let you, or I know it will flag you to say this isn't complete. So I don't think they're going to let you file it electronically without putting something in box 82, or they'll ask you to confirm that it's 0. So I believe that's the case, Anna. I can't say 100% without trying to do that, trying to actually submit it with it blank, but I believe that it will come back with an error to you saying box 82 is blank, is this correct, or something of that nature. Let me see. I do have one newbie person completing T4, so Sandra, I hope that gives you lots of information. You can always contact me afterwards as well, as you know. And can we get a copy of the presentation? Yes, Katie, I will definitely send it out. And after all my webinars, I send out the presentation and all of the handouts. So I will definitely email that out to you. It may not be today. I'm basically backed up with meetings for the whole day, so it might not be until the morning, but I will definitely send this information out to you. And Anna is saying, going back to the submitting box 82 blank, possibly, Anna, that person filed it in paper. Again, it's hard for me to know the answer to that because I would have to try to electronically submit it blank, which I've never done before. So, but my guess, I think that there would be some question or error pop up saying, is this accurate? I don't know if that person possibly filed it by paper and left it blank. But then you will be contacted by CRA with a large balance owing, and so, I mean, yes, I think you would have to somehow contact them to get it resolved, would be my guess. I know you can amend T4s. I'm not actually sure if you can amend the T4 summary, so I'll take a quick look at that and let you know. So I'm just making a note. All right. So that concludes today's webinar. Thank you all very much. You will get a brief survey when I close out the webinar. It is very quick. Please note that there is no ranking, or they don't tell you what the ranking is on the survey. So it's a scale of 1 to 5, and 1 is disagree basically, or highly disagree, or strongly disagree, and 5 would be strongly agree. So please take, it literally probably takes about 60 seconds to complete that survey, and we do ask people to complete a feedback form for every single session that we offer. So it will be greatly appreciated. Also, keep in mind we are having other events throughout the month of February, and well, throughout all the winter for our Buy the Books program. And you can find those events on communitysector.nl.ca, and just go to our events page, and you can find events for all of our programs that we are offering. So I'm just checking and to make sure there's no other questions. All right, and I don't see any other questions there. So if you do have questions afterwards you think of, send me an email or pick up the phone and give me a call. I will help you out as best I can. And thank you very much. And I hope to see you or speak at you or with you again soon in the near future. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Enjoy the sun.